When someone called my son a creature over text, I decided the wedding they'd ban him from would be the night. He learned how loud love can be. I had been saving this one for weeks. The aunt's wedding, Jenna's big day. My son Milo, 8, bright and awkward in the best ways, had practiced the moonwalk in our tiny living room until the floor was dust and his grin a permanent thing. This was a rare social victory for him. For months, he'd worn the idea like armor. We'd talked about the music, the suit, how he might be the unofficial ring escort because Jenna loved him that much. Then my phone lit up. "Hey," the text read, casual and cold from Regina, Jenna's mother. "My daughter's wedding is tomorrow. I'm not having your little freak ruining it. She already deals with that creature enough when babysitting. Don't bring him. I'm deadly serious." Milo was beside me, mimicking the glide he'd been rehearsing. He saw the message before I could hide it. His face folded like paper. "She doesn't want me?" he asked, small and precise. I put my hand on his shoulder. "Jenna invited you, buddy. That's the only voice that matters. We're going." But the words haunted me, creature, freak. They landed heavy and ugly, and I felt my ribs tighten with a version of anger I hadn't known parenting could unlock. I texted Regina back with the kind of calm people use when they're thinking 2 steps ahead. Polite, firm, factual. Jenna texted within minutes with a string of heart emojis, and he's my favorite. "Tell Milo he's ring mischief, okay?" The next morning, Milo picked out dinosaur-tinted glasses at the shop like they were a talisman. He chose a blue tie. Jenna loved and insisted on neon suspenders because the clerk winked and called them character builders. We packed glitter cards and a bouquet of wildflowers wrapped in paper towels. More for the joke than anything. Milo labeled it, "Love from your dinosaur fan." He wrote his name in big, uneven letters and sprinkled stickers like a confetti treaty. On the drive over, he rehearsed his entrance. "Dad, should I moonwalk?" "Of course. Moonwalk and steal a few hearts. That's the plan." I could taste the adrenaline, not mine entirely, but something shared. It felt like stepping into a small, personal battle I was ready to fight in silly shoes and glitter in my pocket. At the venue, Regina stood by the bar, a gilded posture and a posture of ownership. She looked right through us, as if the air itself could be sorted into invited and uninvited molecules. Jenna intercepted before anything could escalate. Beaming and bolting straight for Milo, dress billowing like an exclamation. She scooped him up and laughed, a sound that broke tension like glass. "Look at you, my star." The room was full of relatives and friends, and the small combustible human things that make weddings feel like tiny civilizations. Milo adjusted his glasses, planted himself beside Jenna, and then, like a little comet, he executed his moonwalk across the aisle during cocktail hour. Glasses caught, laughter rose, and for a moment the only sound I heard was pure, uncomplicated approval, the kind that sinks into a kid and changes how he remembers himself. Regina predictably simmered. Her whisper into a phone, the furtive glances, the tightening jaw, she wanted control, and she wasn't getting it. At one point, she staggered to the microphone and cut the music, voice elevated, accusing. "That child wasn't invited and needs to be removed. This is a private event. I'm not proud of it, but I know exactly what hammered me then, not fury at her words, but the way they slid toward Milo and could have shaped him. I moved through the crowd with a quiet speed I didn't know I had, crouched beside Milo, and wrapped an arm around him. He was shaking when I found him, eyes wide. "I'm ruining everything," he whispered. "No," I said. "You're making it better." Then the scene cracked open in a way I hadn't expected. Jenna lunged to pull the mic down. People stood. Nana, who'd been quietly watching from her table, stood up, called out, and wrapped them both in a protective sentence loud enough for everyone to hear. "He is family. He stays." The room shifted. Someone started clapping for Milo on instinct. Someone recorded it. The DJ cued a track like nothing had happened. Jenna took Milo's hand and asked for a dance. He answered with the full moonwalk, a bow and a grin that disarmed more than any speech. Regina sputtered and finally left, red-faced and muttering about money and control. We didn't chase her. We let the music swallow the moment and let the room become the answer to her question of worth. We left the wedding with glitter in Milo's hair and videos, texts from people who'd been in the room. Pictures showed Milo front and center in group photos, dinosaur glasses catching the flash like small flags. Jenna wrote, ordering 100 prints. My phone filled with messages. Your son is magic. That moonwalk was everything. Thank you for bringing him. Then, unexpectedly, there was a ripple that rewired more than one life. Derek Regina's son-in-law, who'd always been quiet at family gatherings, took 2 deep breaths and told his wife, I'm not putting up with this anymore. A week later, he called me, voice tight, and said he was filing for divorce. It felt surreal to be part of an argument with this many human costs. But sometimes one act of shame unravels an older, quieter cruelty in someone else's life. For Milo, though, the real work was smaller and more stubborn, the repair of how he saw himself. The therapist he'd been seeing wrote me an email 2 weeks later that said only, he told the story to his class today and said, my aunt wanted me gone, but everyone clapped for me. Progress. At home, the change was gradual. Milo wore his dinosaur glasses to the park and didn't flinch when other kids asked about them. They make me look like a superhero, he said once, and I believed it. The school invited him to perform a short routine at the spring showcase. He practiced his moonwalk until the lines between practiced and natural blurred. But the backlash hadn't entirely disappeared. There were whispers from Regina's loyalists, polite comments at family dinners about boundaries and decorum. An aunt asked, with a smile too sharp, do you ever worry that he gets too much attention? I wanted to point at the recordings where Regina called my kid names and said nothing. Instead, I said, he got the attention he deserved. Practical things also changed. Jenna's parents, Rob and his mother, negotiated quietly with the venue manager and confirmed Milo was officially on the list. Derek sent me a message offering to set up a small college fund for Milo, and when I protested, he insisted. He saved me from being complicit. It was everything and nothing. A bank transfer can't contain the gratitude on its own, but it was a start. We took advantage of the momentum. I registered Milo for a community dance class where he found a jittery gang of kids who loved motion and applause. He wasn't alone anymore. He learned to take turns leading the circle, learned to be the person who drags smiles out of a room. By the time the holidays rolled around, Regina had retreated to Florida in social media silence. The family's narrative had shifted. The story being told at gatherings now included a new protagonist, a little boy who refused to be diminished. Conversations about wills and money became background. Noise to pictures from the wedding album that friends insisted on framing. Milo's teacher pulled me aside one afternoon and said, he told the class something about being brave. It was simple, but you could tell they were listening. Small things like that are gravity. He started being invited to other family events where he was explicitly welcomed. Jenna's baby, a surprise announcement that came months later, got named in an improvised homage to Milo when Jenna laughed and said, if it's a boy, Milo would be a perfect name. I admit I cried at that text like a small child at home. We kept the rituals. The dinosaur glasses hung on a peg by the door. Milo polished his moonwalk on rainy afternoons. He learned not to carry Regina's words in his pocket like a stone. Sometimes he'd ask about her, do you think Regina is sad? And we'd talk about choices and accountability and how people sometimes use anger to hide other things. There were setbacks. Once, at a grocery store, we encountered a woman who gave Milo a long look and said, kids these days. The look carried the same hollow thunder as older words, but Milo shrugged and showed her his glasses. Dinosaurs are awesome, he told her, and she smiled. Because kids have a way of cutting through adult static, I found a community that mattered more than any bloodline. Parents from the dance class and I started a small support group where we shared resources and swapped rides and celebrated milestones. We learned to name microaggressions and call them out gently. We learned to rehearse our responses so our children wouldn't have to field them alone. Milo's progress at school was steady. The teacher's email became a string of small victories. David did well on the presentation. Milo led a group. He smiled the whole day. That last note felt like proof that he could exist in public without shrinking. A year later, at another family party, a cousin I barely knew pulled me aside. "I saw what happened at Jenna's," she said quietly. "My daughter told me all about Milo. I want my kid to know him. I want him to be part of our lives." People who'd been spectators started to step into supportive roles without grand proclamations. They showed up with small, consistent things. Messages, invites, simple gestures that stitched a new fabric. Regina never came back to family events. She moved away, took her silence with her. Rumors circulated. Something about money, something about marriages fraying. I didn't follow. The work was not in revenge. The work was in tending a boy's sense of belonging until it grew roots. Milo still wears his dinosaur glasses when he wants to feel certain. He still practices the moonwalk. He still reminds me, sometimes in the soft way kids have, that he wants the world to be kinder. I remind him back that the world often is kinder when we make it so, when we stand up when it matters. And when we teach the next generation that difference is not a thing to hide, but a light to celebrate. When people ask me what I would tell other parents in the face of cruelty, I say something simple. Don't shrink. Your presence is a louder answer than any argument. Let your kids see that you believe them, and the room will often follow.